When you see a ghost in town at night, who you gonna call to make it right? We need...
Hi guys, today we're going to create a Lego animation in Blender from start to finish using only 3 assets. This is going to be such a fun project, and we're going to learn about cameras, drivers, constraints, and even use the Blender video editor. Hopefully you'll pick up some great tips on the way. Let's get started. The first stop for any Lego related project is Mecabricks.com. This is an amazing site where you can construct your own Lego from an unlimited virtual Lego set. You can click on a thumbnail to view the model in 3D and use your mouse to spin the model around. If you want to edit or download the model, you can just click the editor button, which takes you to the Lego editor, where you can take your model apart or add in your own Lego parts from the huge library available in the asset browser. Okay, so that's a quick intro to Mecabricks, but how do we get the models out of Mecabricks and into Blender? Well, if you go to the Mecabricks shop, you'll find there's a free add-on called Blender Lite, priced at $0. Simply add this to your cart and go through the purchase process. If you search Mecabricks for town, you'll see this Lego town pre-made with lots of shops. Before we download it into Blender, we're going to make this model a bit smaller so it loads faster and is a bit less processor intensive for Blender. Inside the Mecabricks editor, first rotate the model by left clicking and holding down so you're viewing the model from above. Next, press the selection tool icon and click on the area select icon. Click and drag to select this part of the model and press delete. Do the same to get rid of some of the shops on the right. Next, export the file using the Blender add-on format. This might take a couple of minutes. We're going to choose a car next, so from the Mecabricks home screen, search for Ecto and you'll see this model of the famous Ghostbusters car, along with the Ghostbusters crew. Follow the same steps as before in the editor to export the model to Blender format. Next, it's back to Blender. So starting a fresh scene in Blender, let's start off by pressing A to select everything, then X to delete everything. Go to your file menu and import the Mecabricks. Then go to the place where you downloaded your Mecabricks. Click it. I think you can deselect logo and studs to make it a little bit quicker. And then press import ZMBX. It's going to take a few minutes, so just hold on. Once it's loaded, you'll actually realize it's very big within the scene. That's because the Mecabricks uses millimeters for scale, but Blender imports the millimeters as meters. So to get around this, we're going to press A to select everything, press S to scale, and then type 0.01. That makes everything basically 100 times smaller. And actually now this is quite close now to real world scale. So if we press N on the keyboard and we click something, you can actually see this is 2.56 meters wide. Now we could actually scale this down even further to Lego scale, but this starts to make it hard for Blender to process the ray tracing because it calculates the light kind of in a real world scale. So we'll kind of leave it this is more or less like a human sort of scale. So we'll add a HDRI to kind of give us some background and a bit of lighting. So if you don't already have Blender Kit, hop over to blenderkit.com. There's a link in the description below. Get it downloaded. It's absolutely fantastic free add-on it's got loads of free models and materials and HDRIs. So just once it's downloaded and installed, just click on the little eyeball. And if you click on HDRs, just choose one you like the look of really. I'm going to choose this one called Grass by the Trees. Okay, once that's imported, we can click into Viewport Shading, and it's currently set to EV shading, but we'll actually change this to cycles, I think, for this project. Set it to GPU compute. Make sure denoise is selected. 32 samples should be enough for the viewport, and 64 for the render. I think what we'll do to add a little extra light to the scene, we're going to add in a sun lamp. So press Shift and A, go down to where it says light and add in a sunlight. Press G to grab and Z to move it up on the Z axis just so we can see where it's pointing. I'm just going to press R to rotate it, just rotate it around 45 degrees. And then to increase the brightness, go to the light data over here and increase the strength to say, let's try 20 for a start. And that brightens the scene up quite nicely. All right, so the scene's already looking pretty nice. So it's a good point to save your work. So let's do that. Okay, once we've got it to this stage, we can add in our Ghostbusters car. So if you look at the organizer here, your scene collection, we've got the Lego town over here. Everything's parented to a single empty, which you can see actually all these crazy lines over here. That just basically means it's parented to this empty over here. So we're going to go to File, Import, Mecabricks, and I'm going to import the Ghostbusters car next. Again, it's going to take a few minutes. Just like before, the model's sort of imported way too big for the scene. So what we'll do with the empty selected, you can right click on it and click select hierarchy. Press S to scale and type 0.01. And everything goes down to appropriate size. So with this, we've got two parts really. So we've got the actual Ghostbusters guys themselves. And what we'll do, we're going to select those, press Alt and P, and then clear the parent and keep the transformation. And what we'll do, you can see that all of their parts have been moved in the outliner over here. Press M to move them to a new collection, and we're going to move them to the, we'll call it Ghostbusters. So what we're left with now is the car itself. So if I just grab that empty, you can see just the car moves. So what we'll do, we'll move the car. I'm going to press 7 to get into top view, G to grab, and we're just going to move the car over here. Stick it just there. So now the car is kind of basically in front of these shops. So what we could do now, we can actually get the car moving. So the simplest way to do that, with the empty selected and on frame 1, we'll press I and we'll put a location keyframe. And then we'll go to frame 120, press G to grab, then Y to grab on the Y axis. And we're just going to move the car all the way over here to about here. And we'll press I again and have another location keyframe on frame 120. So now the car moves from here to here. For a little bit more realism, we'll add a little bit of rotation to these wheels. Now, I'm not going to worry too much about the accuracy. This is Lego, and obviously you can spend a lot more time messing around. But for the purpose of this animation, we're going to select all three parts of the wheel that we can see. Press Ctrl and J, and that joins them together as one piece. And if you go up to the item menu and try some of these different rotations, let's just try some of these. So it looks like it's the X rotation. So I'm going to put a driver in the X rotation box, pressing hash and typing frame divided by 2. So it looks like that. And now you'll actually see the car wheel. I don't know if you can see very clearly. Let's just go into a different view mode. You can't see, but the car wheel is actually rotating now. I'm going to do the same thing for this wheel here. Ctrl J to join. Hashtag frame divided by 2. And that'll also put a rotation on this wheel. Okay, so now we've kind of got a little animation of the car moving. What we could also do, just for fun, we could have these little Lego heads turning to look at the car as it goes by. So I'll show you how to do that. So let's pick this guy here for a start. I think he's a little scout. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select his head, hold down Shift, select his hat too. Press Ctrl and J to join. And if you, let's just try and rotate this. Let's have a look. So what we could do, you could either animate it by hand and keyframe the rotation, or we could use a constraint. So in this case, we're going to use a constraint. So with his head selected, go down to constraints, and we're going to add a damped track constraint. The target, I'm going to set the target to be this part on the car here, the wing mirror. And we're going to set the track axis to be Z. So now you'll see the little guy's head actually turns as the car goes by, as if he's watching the car. So we could do this for some of the other heads as well. So select both parts of the head, press Ctrl and J, add a damp track constraint, choose your target, select the track's axis to Z. So now you could have this for a few characters where they all kind of independently are watching the car as it goes by. The next thing to do probably would be to add a camera. So let's do that. So press Shift and A, I'm going to add in a camera. I basically get my viewport more or less where I want the camera to be. Let's go back to the start for the animation. So I'll have my camera here to start. So we'll press Control, Alt and 0 on the number pad. And that basically places our camera where the viewport is. And we'll press I for a location keyframe here. And then we're going to move to frame 120. And I'm going to move the viewport first to about around here. And I'm going to press Control, Alt and 0 again to move the camera in the right position. And I'm just going to tweak the camera Z rotation a little bit just to get the car in full. And I'm going to press I for a location. In fact, let's press I and do a location and rotation keyframe there. It's probably what I should have done at the beginning. Okay, let's just tweak the rotation of the car at the beginning. I, location and rotation. So now the car moves and the camera pans with it as well. You could also use a constraint for the camera if you wanted to achieve the same sort of thing here. Would be a good way to do it. So just to tweak the camera a little bit further, I'm going to click on where it says camera. I'm going to change the focal length to something a little bit wider, a wider angle lens. So focal length of maybe, I think probably I'm going to go for 35. I think maybe I'm just going to tweak the brightness of the sun down a little bit as well, or 15. And you can also add a little bit of colour if you want to the sun to give your scene a bit of a look. So I'm just going to try and be subtle with it, just a little bit of orange to it. And if you scroll down the camera settings to where it says look, you can also change this to medium high contrast or even very high contrast to give it a bit more of a punchy look. I think we'll render this little sequence out and see how it looks. So just go to your render settings. I'm going to change this to 25 frames per second. We'll just do a frame 1 to 120. Set your file format to FFmpeg video. Encoding can be MPEG-4. Video codec you can leave at H.264. I changed my output quality to perceptually lossless and give it a place to save it. When you've done all your settings, just go to your render menu up here and click Render Animation. Once the render's finished, you can easily view it by going to the render menu and clicking View Animation. That looks pretty cool. We could extend the scene by rendering the same scene but from a different camera view angle. So we'll start by adding a new camera by pressing Shift and A and then clicking Camera. We're going to set the new camera to the active camera by clicking on the camera icon. And what we can do also is just move the viewport. Let's focus on these people's faces and then press Control, Alt and 0. And that moves this new camera to this new position. So you can just tweak your camera. Maybe we'll go a bit more zoomed in and perhaps we'll turn the camera around a bit. A great way to control the camera is go to the View menu, Navigation and then Walk Navigation. And then you can move the camera with the mouse And by pressing the W, A, S and D keys, you can actually move around the scene as if it was a computer game. You can also move up and down with the Q and E keys. So let's kind of choose an angle maybe around something like this. And what we'll do, we'll add some depth of field. And we'll click and focus on this guy in the middle. We'll also increase the focal length a little tiny bit. Perhaps we'll also just add a bit of pan to the camera. So I don't want to render out the whole scene. I just want to render maybe from frame 80. So we'll start at frame 80. And finish at frame 110. And we'll just render this short section here. And perhaps we'll also just add a little bit of movement to the camera. So we'll start the camera frame 80 and press I for location and rotation. And then we'll just move the camera at the end, perhaps just across just a little bit. Maybe also rotate on the Z. Press I for location and rotation keyframe. So we just get a tiny bit of movement from the camera. You can also change the interpolation of the camera by pressing T. And instead of having a Bezier interpolation, we'll change to a linear, which will mean we'll lose that kind of soft ramp up and soft ramp down at the beginning and the end. Right, let's save this one and render it out. So we finished the render and we can view the animation. And we're getting some little weird flashes on this guy's hat. This is basically due to Cycles not quite getting it right. To reduce this kind of flashing, we can actually do something called clamping. So if you go to render settings and scroll down to where it says clamping, I'm going to set this one to 10 where it says direct light, and that should fix the flashings on those frames. I'm just going to render out the animation again just to check that's worked. Okay, that's great. So by adjusting the clamping of the direct light, we've managed to fix most of that flickering problem. Let's just save that. And what we'll do next, I'm going to show you how to use the Blender video editor to edit your clips together. So File, New, Video Editing. So here we have kind of the main window. You need to set your frame rate to the same as you've rendered out in. And what you can do, you can literally just drag and drop your video clips into this sequencer. So I'm going to do that now. So you can see here we've got our 2 video clips here. I'm just going to drag them one by one into this video window. And now you can see them playing up here. So what you can actually do is rearrange your clips just by dragging them around. And you can also split your clips by finding the place you want to do the cut in the timeline, right clicking and then clicking split. So what we'll do, we'll kind of jump cut here. Let's just move these around a little bit. So now you can see when we press play, it plays the initial pan, we cut to the people's heads swinging round, and then we cut to the car driving off. And when you finish, you can just render out using the same settings as we did before in the render window. Okay, that gives you everything you need to know to get started with making your very first Lego animation. Okay, so I've just spent a little bit longer on this animation. I've just added in one last scene where the Ghostbusters are waiting in line and all the heads turn just to meet the car as the car comes up. I've also made some changes to the environment. So actually after animating it, I thought it would work better at night. So I've swapped the HDRI for a night HDRI. It was called Garden Night. It's this one over here. Okay, so I've also taken the sun. I've turned the strength of the sun down. So it's now at 5, and I've also changed the colour of the sun to blue to kind of make it more like a moonlight. I've added a couple of lights in either end. You can see the one here is blue, just to give a nice blue tone to this end of the animation. And at the other end, let me show you, I've just added a red light just to kind of give it a bit of interest as we start the animation. And the last thing I did was added a volume cube. So basically, let me show you what it looks like. I added a cube and just resized it to kind of fill this area. And then for the material, I actually created a new material. I removed the surface so it actually said disconnected, so there was nothing here. And then under the volume, I just set this to a volume scatter, which is just here, and just change the density to 0.02 just to give a little bit of fog to the scene. Adds a bit of extra atmosphere and gives a bit of nice glow around the light areas. And then I've rendered it out. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next one.
When you see a ghost in town at night, feel a shiver through your spine. Creepy shadows give a fright. Who you gonna call to make it right? We need the ghost chasers.